Hi, how's it going? In this video I want to talk about what I learnt from watching all of Ray Harryhausen's films. Technically bar one, because I still have not seen Mighty Joe Young, because it's very difficult to find a physical copy of it in general. Very expensive, I should say. I mean, I probably could find a shitty DVD, but doesn't matter. I'll get to it eventually. Sometimes, life finds a way. But in the meantime, I have all of these. Dare I say, the rest of the collection, including the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, the VOYAGE set for Ray Harryhausen Ultimate Collection, which is hilarious because why would it be Ultimate if I have more to add? Then you got 20 Million Miles to Earth, Mysterious Island, First Man in the Moon, 1 Million Years BC, The Valley of GWANGI, and Clash of the Titans. The Harryhausen set itself includes several films from It Came From Beneath the Sea, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, The Seventh Voyage of SINBAD, The Three Worlds of Gulliver, Jason and the Argonauts, The Golden Voyage of SINBAD, and SINBAD and the Eye of the Tiger. These range from 1955 all the way to 1977, which isn't it just wonderful, just trying to find where exactly in this goddamn set do I put it in my collection? I've just put it in between, because the 20 million miles... No, wait, hold on. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms comes before all of them, but then this set stretches in between the rest of them. It's annoying, because, yeah, it's a nice set, though. If you haven't seen it before, it's the Australian edition, the second release that they have for it. They've technically re-released it a third time with Mysterious Island, which is just a DVD upscale from Cinema Cult, so if you're an Australian viewer, this is what you can get from the standard version. This is like the reversible artwork. The standard artwork is the same as this. So yeah, it has like all these different images from different movies, which is really nice. You got the monster, look at the Cyclops. You know, it's not bad. Hilariously, they have the coloured version of... It Came From Beneath the Sea, but then it doesn't for the Earth vs. the Flying Saucers. So I don't know, worth noting, because it does come with the colorized versions of both of them. So does 20 Million Miles to Earth. That comes with the colorized version. So, God, I kind of wanted to dive through these because I rewatched 20 Million Miles to Earth. Just because I kind of felt like it. I was like, you know what? I feel like rewatching this. And I put it on, and it had because I got the imprint version, I'd had the old Umbrella 2-pack, which also came with First Man in the Moon, but I gifted that to a friend. And so I was watching it, and I realized that it had the color version. And now I have done a video talking about this before, so I won't dive too deeply into it, but I'll link it down below, where I talk about colorizations of films, or black and white films, specifically referencing this actual film. And I actually really enjoyed the colorization of it, in contrast to the black and white. I enjoy both of them. I think they're both beautiful. But, having seen the featurettes, and there's a lot of featurettes, they included footage from, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers and It Came From Beneath the Sea. And those, in contrast, in terms of color variations, honestly, didn't really tickle my fancy. I preferred the black and white. But, let's talk about these films. I do have a ranked list, which I might do last. I'll try to cover these all in release order, which I'll have to look up in Letterboxd because I've got 14 films. Again, I'm missing one, which I'm very disappointed by, but it's just one of those things where it's like, the only Blu-ray that exists for Mighty Joe Young is like a 4-pack from, I think, Warner Archive. It has, Son of Kong, Them, which was the Big Ants movie, and I think it might also have the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms. I think it's or maybe it's a premium collection that has all 4. I already have 2 of them. I don't have Son of Kong, unfortunately. Would love to buy that as well, you know me. I think in this case it would be visual effects. I will also note that he did do the visual effects for that one little, test animation for War of the Worlds, the 50s film, and I have seen that's part of the imprint set, and that's stunning. It's only a couple seconds. There's I don't think there's any audio to it, but I really liked it, So there is the Evolution, which is a 3-minute short, but I think I've seen that. Again, early test footage of dinosaurs and stuff, which is one of those fun things of seeing how far he came from those dinosaurs to like 1 million years BC in Valley of GWANGI. Then, of course, there's Mighty Joe Young from 1949, which I have not yet seen. I really hate that I haven't seen that, but you know, it is what it is. But we start with The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. I'm not going to give too much of a review from these films. I mostly kind of want to talk about what I enjoyed about the stop motion effects, more or less, with the dynamation and everything. And trust me, if you get these sets, definitely watch the special features. A lot of them are from like old DVDs where he talked about these films back in the early 2000s, but a lot of them are nicely insightful. And then also a lot of them are just people who are huge fans of his talking about his works and how they influenced them. And by huge fans, I mean people like Joe Dante and Tim Burton and like Stan Winston I'm trying to remember his name, but there are so many special effects people who love Harryhausen's films. It's really fun listening to those and their anecdotes about growing up watching Harryhausen and whatever. And also his response basically being like, man, it's so cool that all these people were like grew up watching my stuff and they became inspired by it. Now we have this whole special effects industry. It's crazy. So I gave Beast from 20,000 Fathoms 2.5 stars. For me, it's a poor man's Godzilla. Obviously, it came out the year before Godzilla, but it basically just is Godzilla, and that's perfectly fine. You know, the classic sci-fi irradiated dinosaur monster kind of thing terrorizes a city. In this case, it's New York, which is probably the best elements of the film when it terrorizes the city. For me, a big thing I really liked about these films was when it blended the monsters with the live action stuff. And this film failed pretty heavily at that because most of it was just a reverse shot. And you might be thinking, but Julian, they can't have monsters and people in the same shots. Trust me, they do, and they do it really well. Half the time, like it came from beneath the sea. That's a octopus monster attacking San Francisco, and you'd think it's not going to do much, but it's able to push its tentacles through buildings and still kill people and whatever, and it's like, it's such a beautiful thing to look at. So, like, stuff like that, especially the black and white footage, how they blended it, seamless. With later films, it's trickier, blue screen effects, colour, there's a lot of different iffy things, so on a technical craft it has to keep evolving, and sure, it's one of those things that I can give the earlier films from the 50s, like, more of a, these work a lot better, either because they're in black and white, or just because it's kind of enough of a budget to make sure it all works, and contrast, and, like, you know, they got a lot of classic King Kong effects of using rear screen projection and, like, cutting out an image there, putting in, like, the stop motion on top of a matched image with, like, the actual actors, and going frame by frame to have it animate. The amount of technical craft he puts into these films is stunning, and it becomes more obvious when you see later Blu-ray editions of these films where it's like, oh, hey, you can really tell when there's an effect shot coming up because the footage looks grainier, because clearly it's a, you know, rear screen projection, or it's a film on top of film kind of thing for the stop motion to be on top of the live action, because they would film live action and blend in the animation later. So, yeah, it's a bit of a annoying thing for me visually in terms of like looking at how they, you know, blend in, but that's probably the benefit of the black and white films. This one kind of being an exception, but at the same time it still does work. It's just that a lot of it's just reverse shot. Here's a dinosaur, reverse shot, here's people going, you know. The film itself is fine. It's enjoyable enough. I wasn't too enthused by it because, again, it's a narrative I've seen before and is a film I've seen done better. But I still enjoy the effects. It's still very B-movie 50s, you know, irradiated monster kind of movie, so it is what it is. But, you know, it has its fans, and I won't like say that it's a piece of shit. I think it's fine. I imagine I might like it more on rewatch because this is the first time I've seen it, but you know, sometimes the expectation can overweigh the actual picture, or just I need to be in the mood to watch a bunch of black and white 50s sci-fi films, you know, like that and Thing from Another World and stuff like that. Like double featuring that could get me in the right mood, you know. I'm that kind of person. Anyway, the next film is It Came From Beneath the Sea, which is from 1955. I gave this film 3 stars, another first time watch for me, and I watched the black and white, not the colour version. I did like this one a lot more. It still has a little bit of issues with how it blends the creatures in, especially when it's attacking the San Francisco Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. My main criticism for the monster is the fact that it doesn't look like it's just come out of water, which you might think is like, wow, that's a bit of a harsh criticism, you know, it's a stop-motion creature, it doesn't need to look like it's coming out of water, even though it literally is. But he does rectify this, luckily, in Clash of the Titans, which I thought was wonderful. So, with the Kraken and how that blends with water effects, and it's like, man, I wish they actually had a special feature where he talked about how he did that, because it's insane. There's a lot of insane effects that he just is able to carry out throughout most of his career. Not like by the end of his career, but just most of it in general. But it's, you know, again, it's an alright film. It's a giant octopus. It's a H-bomb test gone wrong. You know, mutates a fucking octopus, goes around killing people. It does have some beautiful effects. The characters are pretty fun. If I'm not mistaken, this one's a strangely feminist film, which I do enjoy. Because the protagonist is the only woman in the film who speaks, but she is the protagonist, and like the other 2 main characters are like the opposing love interests. Like one's the scientist who understands women, but one's the not really misogynistic guy, but just kind of the heroic army man who's like the handsome one. You know, he doesn't understand the modern woman, but yeah, he's at least still trying. It's got some interesting character dynamics like that. It's a more interesting character film, which is nice because again, some of these characters are mostly just military people or scientists, and it's not always the most interesting thing, but sometimes it can be. It's again like watching a Showa era Godzilla. It's kind of what you expect. You're mostly there for the monsters and the effects, and honestly, Tentacle Monster, he does a lot of great things with it. I was very impressed. Again, like when it attacks the harbour later in the film, and it's just destroying buildings that are right next to the docks. I'm like, man, don't build next to water. Giant monsters might come out of the water and attack it. Who'd have thought? So next up we have Earth vs. the Flying Saucers from 1956, which I gave 3.5 stars. This one I really enjoyed. I actually really liked the characters, because I love alien sci-fis, and the way he has the flying saucers, wonderful. He mentions in the special features how it was like 2 different parts of a disc, and like they had like different like designs on the top and bottom, so when they span in like different directions to give it some like, you know, life to it, it actually made it gave it some texture, it gave it some like personality for little flying discs, and I love that because they're like traditional flying discs, but he makes them so much more interesting just for his own little things. Sure, they're on strings as well, which most of the time you can't even tell, but I loved it. I loved when they're just destroying buildings and like abducting people. They're not really abducting people, but they, you know, there are effects where they kind of abduct people. But the film itself isn't too bad. You know, scientists trying to launch a satellite, these aliens trying to say, hey, you shouldn't launch this satellite because we want to take over your planet. But we want to do it peacefully. We don't want to do a War of the Worlds. Please. We don't want to do a War of the Worlds. Then they do a War of the Worlds. So they verse the flying saucers. It's pretty fun. I enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun B-movie sci-fi, and I don't find that to be a degrading thing of B-movie sci-fi. It's just a, you know, form of the subgenre. But I really enjoyed it. I really love the effects. Some of my favourite ones from Harryhausen, they're so simple but so, like, ingenious. Definitely worth checking out. And again, the characters are pretty fun as well. Like, it's still scientists, but, you know, it's scientists who have, like, just gotten married, and they're interesting enough, you know, there's enough conflict for, with them and how they relate to them, to the aliens and stuff, so I enjoy elements like that. There's some nice concepts presented, and fights to be won. Then we get to 20 Million Miles to Earth, which is my second time watching it. Again, watching the colour version this time, and honestly, I adore this film. I gave it 4 stars. It's it's probably my second favourite of Harryhausen's monsters. I think as one that's heavily showcased, Ymir, Ymir, he's one of his few sympathetic creatures, and I love Ymir. Like the fact that it's a Venus monster, like a monster taken from Venus, that's like grows rapidly on Earth because it's not its native, planet, and so hence becomes this really big monster really quickly. And you see it kind of as just like innocent child that becomes kind of a prisoner, that becomes rampant and kind of monstrous, but unintentionally. It's confused, it's scared, it's very, ranks back to like King Kong and stuff, and you feel sympathy for this character. And I really like that about it. The rest of the characters are fine, military scientists, that kind of jazz, but I really like it. I like how it's set in Italy, and then it's like, I think then no, it's still set in Italy. They even have a fight at the Colosseum, which was really fun. So the effects blend really nicely. Ymir looks great. The color version does look really good as well. I love the different shades of color that they use throughout it, especially for like Ymir. But like you look at the oceans and how they're able to conflict it back and forth. It looks so nice. The black and white still looks tremendous. Don't get me wrong, but I actually really enjoyed the color version too. The humans are way too peachy cream in their color. Like trust me, I look pale as shit. They look like they're literally just the color cream. It's absurd, especially because most of them are meant to be like tan Italians, so they should not look that cream. They should look a bit more tan, I think. But yeah, it's not bad. I really liked it. I honestly think it's one of my favorites of his films, and one that I would happily revisit. Then we get to probably my favorite of his films, which is 1958's The Seventh Voyage of SINBAD. This one is so up there as my favorite. It's my top three are really tricky as to which ones I prefer, but I really just enjoy the swashbuckling adventure that this is. I love the creatures, the Cyclops. I love so many elements to this film. Even the little genie kid, the fact that he's bloody meant to be wife turns into a small person. There are so many fun visual effects like that, and enough of it gives it like character to Sinbad, because he's a very dry character for most of the time. In all three of the films I've seen, he's very much a kind of a bit too horny for his own good, realistically, but when you're at sea for that long. But he's got a way about him, and in this one in particular, he's portrayed by Cohen Matthews. And I think Cohen is probably the best presentation of the character. But you get some great monsters, you get some great fights, you get probably my favorite use of skeletons. I know Jason the Argonauts has the best use of skeletons, but I absolutely adore the skeleton fight in this film. It's just him one-on-one with a skeleton, going up the stairs. I love how they interact with it, like in reality. It's one of those things that's so wonderful about Harryhausen films, where he's able to, because he's there on set when they're making it, know when to blend like live action with stop motion. And it's so cool. Just the sword fighting, the way that when he just kicks the skeleton, it falls to the ground and just blows up into actual real skeleton bits, because they actually did that. And I like how they blend it all. The Cyclops is probably the most, notorious creature, and one of the most recognizable of Harryhausen's, and I mean, for that reason alone, it's like, holy shit. Like, when you first see it, it's like, wow, okay. And then a guy throws a spear, and it suddenly has a spear stuck in its leg, and you're like, oh, they just did that. And that becomes such a traditional, like a trademark of Harryhausen, where he's able to blend a live-action element, just like a little spear getting thrown across the screen from someone, and then landing into a stop-motion creature, and it's stuck in that creature and walking around. And I love how he does that. He does it later in one of the Valley of GWANGI with cowboys, and they're like lassoing a dinosaur. It's seamless. It's such a wonderful thing, and I love that. That's the kind of things I was looking for, like how seamless he's able to blend like the creatures with the backgrounds. Sure, some of the image still looks a bit murky and whatever, because of course you're adding like different layers of film together. It's gonna be a bit more dense in contrast to like single layered shots. But that's just like a technical aspect of it. That's just kind of how it has to be. Yeah, and also it's kind of more of a issue of larger like scaled images with like big wide shots and stuff. But it still works. And honestly, you can't go wrong. You get the evil wizard, you gotta kill some monsters, prevent a war. what else do you want? I gave it 4.5 stars just in case I hadn't mentioned it. It is the second time I've seen it, so I think, especially when I watched it, I was quite tired, but it allowed me to appreciate more of the technical qualities. But I do actually like Sinbad. I think he's very charismatic in this one. A lot of people say he's wooden in his performance, but I'm like, I don't know, it works for me. Oh, I also really like some of the scores to these movies. This one in particular, I really liked. I really liked the main film, but I love the music used during the skeleton fight. I love how the score just emphasizes the mysteries of this strange land with a lingering, horrific feeling behind it all. So, man, check out my reviews down on Letterboxd. There is a playlist where a set list, a list of all these films. With detailed reviews. The next one is The Three Worlds of Gulliver, which isn't my favourite of his. It's one of my least favourites, just in general. I gave it 2.5 stars. It's less about the stop motion and more about the compositing of, like, green screen elements of, look, he's gigantic and these people are small, but they're all real and it's templated together. So it's a bit dated. It is 1960. It is what it is. It's more of a children's fable kind of adventure. Every segment where he's with where he's the giant, then he's the small person, and then he's home. It's all like moral messaging and stuff about, you know, not being a bickering piece of shit. It's very heavy-handed, and I don't like that about it. It's very for kids, but I can understand that. But I also just don't find it that amusing. And also, it's one of those, you watch it, and you know how most, like, say, like, Pixar films, they're for kids, but then there's all these like adult references, like, oh, like you're watching Shrek and you're like, there's a lot of dick jokes in this movie for a movie for children. This kind of has the same thing, except it's just blatant about the fact that Gulliver is horny as shit. And that's about it. So there are still some animated monsters that I really appreciate. I like when they're miniature. That's my favorite part of the film because it's the only part I actually enjoyed. Because like they're interacting with giant sets, and I like that, like the chess pieces and stuff. I really dig that. That's a really fun element that I like when they blend that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's still some animated fights, and there's a squirrel that he has to run away from. It's okay. It's not the best. I didn't love the film that much, and it was a bit long. But you know, sure, why not? Then we have Mysterious Island from 1961, which I gave 3.5 stars. This one I found really interesting because it's a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I've never seen or read. It has a lot of fun elements to it because I'd say maybe, I call it a prologue, but it's really just the first act where they're escaping prison, get in the balloon, and then they land. That whole section is a bit, it's alright. It's when they get to the island, that's when shit starts getting good. Like, they get to the island, more characters arrive to the island, they have to fight giant creatures, there's like a giant crab at one stage, which looks so good. It's one of those great mixing, again, of practical and, like, stop-motion elements. There's a weird chicken monster, there's giant bees, there's an underwater monster as well, which is really fun, and a whole underwater city. It's just gorgeous. I love the fact that it's got the submarine as well. There's so many fun elements to it like that. Like when they first find the submarine, it's like you found an Easter egg. You're not meant to find this. You're not meant to interact with it. Or you can't interact with it. For me, it was like, it reminded me of Portal 2 when you find the Borealis. And it's a secret little thing, you know, you can find it, but it's not relevant to the story or the plot. You know, it doesn't progress anything. It's just a fun little thing that's just there, like, oh, what's this all about? In this case, they do still actually use the submarine, but they never actually get it out of port. So it's kind of just got that eerie feeling to it. I like it. The characters are pretty fun. They're not too developed. None of the characters in these films are really that developed. It's usually just about archetypal characters, fighting monsters, trying to survive. That's about it, you know? And this one's got some great monsters, so you can't really lose. Yeah. It's a fun spectacle, fun HD... I think it's H.G. Wells. No, Jules Verne story. So, yeah. And I don't think you need to read or watch 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because they do actually explain what basically happened, or at least who Captain Nemo is. They just bring him up as if it's just a thing, and then he shows up later, and you're like, that makes sense. They mentioned him earlier. Of course he's going to show up. Then, of course, we have Jason and the Argonauts from 1963, which I gave 4.5 stars. It is... I'm surprised I'm pretty sure it was a rewatch. Yeah, it was a rewatch. I hadn't reviewed it before, but this was my first time reviewing it, and... What do I want to say about this? I think I might as well just read my review. Worth noting, an adventure film so good it literally doesn't end. I don't think there's much to say that hasn't already been said, but I will note the things I love. The skeletons, first and foremost, are so iconic and cool, and there's so much happening that you have to rewind to catch all the elements that are on display of all the different skeletons fighting the different people. Beautiful stuff. I love how they're so well known about the film and literally are only there for the last few minutes of the film, because who needs to wrap up the actual story? Let's fight some skeletons, then fuck off. I really enjoy these mythology-style stories with the Greek gods, like Clash of the Titans, or really any swords and sandal film that has, you know, big swords, giant creatures, and some references to a greater power watching our heroes. It's just so fun to see an adventure where normal guys have to face crazy foes. The character development and romance and the overarching plot doesn't really matter, because it's all about the adventure. We are here to see some dudes fighting monsters and save some people and move on. I love the harpies, especially given I didn't remember a lot of this film, so when they showed up I was like, fuck yeah, the harpies, I forgot about the harpies. I love when there are so many monsters in a Harryhausen film, because you're just like, oh my god, it's that fucking thing. I forgot about that fucking thing. Talos, obviously, is great. These are all, like, creatures of nightmares. They just give you such a pure sense of dread. And Talos is a good, like, iconic character as it is, but he brings forth, like, the idea of not just can Harryhausen create organic creatures like the harpies, like any living creature, even skeletons, organic to a degree. Talos is made of copper. It's a mineral. It's stone, and he does this in a later film. One of the I think it's SINBAD, the Golden Voyage of SINBAD, which I adore the creature in those ones, because 2 of them are made of actual materials, and I like how he kind of sets that up here, that he can do that. And also, it's a giant made of stone. It's a bit clanky because it's made of stone, but it's also a giant, so it kind of makes sense. And it's a giant stone dude. What do you expect? It's great. It's just crazy how the story doesn't even end. Jason doesn't get his revenge. He just searches for the Golden Fleece, and that's his destination in this film. The monsters are his roadblocks, and the guy who killed his father isn't important in the film. Well, at least not really anyway. So, yeah, they did continue it in some comic books, but, that's basically it. So, it's strange. It's kind of like a proto-version of Clash of the Titans. Like, realistically, it's just Clash of the Titans, but probably arguably better. I don't know. I think it's a better film, mostly because it doesn't have blue screen effects, for the most part, so there's stuff in it that I enjoy more than in Clash of the Titans, but we'll get to that one later. Then we have First Men in the Moon, which is a science fiction film. Yeah, most of these haven't been... I mean, sure, some of these have been science fiction with aliens and stuff, but this one, they go to the moon. And the opening sequence is beautiful. They land on the moon. It looks spectacular. The rest of the film is... It's alright. I gave it 3 stars. It's pretty well shot, and I do enjoy the first half of the comedic antics between the characters, but then when they go to the moon and you get all the effects stuff, which does look fantastic. The way the moon looks, the way that the inside the moon looks... Even the monsters, like the aliens, most of them are people in costumes, but the animated ones look fantastic. There are some great elements to it, and Harryhausen really brings his A game, which is wonderful. The story in the second half kind of falls flat, though, because it's just, oh no, scary aliens. We have to, completely remove any personality we had previous to this moment and just be, serious scientific explorers, and I didn't really like that. It didn't really work as well for me. It's still, it's alright for a film, It's enjoyable. Looks pretty good. Effects are pretty fun. Then you get 1 million years BC with her. She's the reason to watch this film. But also Harryhausen's dinosaurs, because honestly, I think his dinosaurs in this film are probably some of the best effects for organic creatures, if not the best effects for any organic creature I've ever seen of his. Ymir is sympathetic, the flying saucers are dynamic but simple. The skeletons are groovy. The monsters in Eye of the Tiger, no, not Eye of the Tiger, in Golden Voyage of Sinbad are stupendous, and what's in Clash of the Titans, holy shit. But the way his dinosaurs move and act in this one are so wonderful, and it's mixed with like giant turtles and then like some other giant bugs and stuff, which is always fun. But it's the dinosaurs I'm here for. And I think that they're better in this one than Valley of Gwangi, despite them being utilised more in Valley of Gwangi. But the film itself is fine. I gave it 3 stars. It's the second time I've watched it. The first time I watched it, I was bored out of my mind. I was like, the dinosaurs are cool, the rest of this movie sucks. This time watching it, I get it. I understand it. It's a very primitive in its story. It's very basic. There's no dialogue outside of just people saying who they are, because it's meant to be prehistoric. It's meant to be very simple and basic, and there's a lot of visual storytelling. There's a lot of acting and like just visual dynamics to tell you how the story is being told. So, you know, it's all about power and that kind of dynamic, and it's a very visually easy to watch kind of movie. Arguably a bit too easy, realistically. But again, primitive is a key word here. But you're not really there for the characters and whatever. Sure, Raquel Welch, hell of a name, stunning, simply stunning. The fact that she also did a interview prior to her death talking about this film, which was on the Studio Canal release, she looked amazing. Holy shit. One of those like golden age of Hollywood actors that just like, holy fuck, she looks good. Even like, it's like Cher, just doesn't age, you know, insane. But she's really good. John Richardson is pretty good as well. Like, there are some fun enough characters, you know. It's simple enough that you got to have some suspense of disbelief because of how attractive some of these people are compared to the other people. A lot of other people in this movie not very attractive. Very much like, oh, we want these people to look like they've never showered a day in their life, but we want the main characters, the ones we're going to put on the poster, to look like they have a trailer off screen, but we're not going to show that. So yeah, there's some fun creatures, some pterodactyls and stuff. I think it's like pteranodons, I think they're actually called in these movies. They're never actually called pterodactyl, which is really interesting. It's like a different breed. Maybe for copyright reasons? I don't know. I don't know what the deal was, but there's some fun dinosaurs. And, you know, I enjoy that. I enjoy just the primitive action. There's a raptor scene as well, where someone gets, like, brutally murdered. I love when he is able to make a person from live action into stop motion, so like the dinosaur will attack a person and suddenly they'll be stop motion screaming and moving around like a real person in the mouth of the dinosaur. I love it. It's cute little things like that that really like blends it together. Like, sure, to the naked eye, that's a stop motion human being, but for the effect, oh my god, this dinosaur is real and killing these people. I love it. You can't go wrong. I love how he does that. There's all these little things throughout the films that you just blends it so nicely. Sure, the image might be a little disjointed, but then you look at the effect, and the effect, beautiful. 10 out of 10. 3-star movie. 10 out of 10. Then we have The Valley of Gwangi, which I actually watched today for the first time. This was interesting, given that it literally comes 3 years after 1 million years BC, and it's also a dinosaur film. It has interesting elements. I think it's a slightly better film because narratively it's more interesting. It is cowboys versus dinosaurs, but it also isn't. It's like that. I thought that that's what the movie was, seeing the back cover. Dinosaur, cowboy, oh my god, that sounds genius. Every boy would love that as a kid. Probably some girls too. I don't know if they like cowboys or dinosaurs. It's a very masculine thing, you know, with the patriarchy. Anyway, horses. So girls like horses too, don't they? So anyway, nevertheless, the thing with this film is that it's kind of very much a free act structure. You look at the first act, tiny horse. Wow, in a little rodeo. Cool. I want to see this tiny horse on a big horse rodeo. That sounds amazing. What's that? The tiny horse has run away and now we've found a valley full of dinosaurs? But hey, we've got cowboys. They're going to take care of it. What's that? Their guns are filled with blanks? Oh shit, well I guess they're going to have to just capture the T-Rex and just take it with them. Fuck it. let's put that on a show. Let's realize that this movie is just a remake of King Kong, because it is. They've just done King Kong, which is so funny. Because it literally is just, we have this idea. Oh, look, the idea kind of went bust, and let's hey, look, there's a bigger idea. It also happens to be a dinosaur. Let's take that instead. Put it on the rodeo, and the rodeo is in a big arena, and then the dinosaur gets loose and starts attacking an elephant and killing people, and then runs into a church, and then God's power destroys it. No, wait, no, it's just the power of fire. Prometheus's power destroys it. This one suffers from the fact that the dinosaur, at least in my eyes, wasn't a very sympathetic character. It's, you think of King Kong, you think of Ymir, characters taken out of places that they belong, and, you're meant to feel sorry for them. But in this case, it's like, no, this guy just wants to eat people. Very animalistic of him. Sure, why not? So, it's a consistently moving film, as in narrative-wise. And again, the characters aren't the most, three-dimensional, whatever. They're very archetypal, whatever. They help to carry the plot along. Most of these characters do that. It's a little bit of a flaw with most of the films. It's why, for me, none of them are really masterpieces, except for the adventure ones like SINBAD and Jason and the Argonauts and even Clash of the Titans, where they have to propel the story. The story doesn't propel them, Sometimes they still do propel the story, but, yeah, it's just usually from how they get from A to B, So, yeah, anyway, not a bad film. Enjoyable, iconic. I had never heard of it before, so the fact that it's just cowboys versus dinosaurs, I'm like, that's genius. Why have people not done that? Cowboys versus aliens? I want dinosaurs, motherfucker. Anyway, the next one we have is The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which, as a narrative film, not bad. I gave it 3.5 stars. It suffers again from, this is where the blue screen effects become really obnoxious. It's the 70s. And yeah, I don't like the blue screen effects, but I do like the rest of the story. It takes a bit of time to get going because it is an hour and it's 105 minutes, so these are getting long. And it's a bit of an issue with the first half. Its pacing's very off. But you get some character setups and whatever. Then they fight a creature that's literally the mast. Is it a mast of a ship? When there's a statue on the front of the ship. In this case, it's a woman that comes to life, and it's made of wood, and they have to fight it, and it's all creaking and moving slowly because it's made of wood. Genius. There's stuff like that that's just like, oh my god, that is such a cool idea. Like, sure, some of these other creatures are like little bird thingies and dragons and whatever the shit, but this one's made of wood. That's insane. But then it gets better. They finally arrive on the island. They have to fight the actually, Tom Baker's in this one, isn't he? Yeah, he's not bad in this one, actually. There's a guy who has a mask that's just fully gold, which must have been really annoying to film, because that would have been really, really hot. Anyway, they have a goddess, a statue that's got, 6 arms. And the first time they introduce it, it's Tom Baker's character. He's an evil magician dude, and wizard, I should say. And he uses a spell to bring it to life, and he tells it to dance. So it dances, and you're like, oh shit, that's pretty neat. And then Sinbad comes in with his fellow band of merry men, and the wizard is like, kill these bastards. And so it suddenly appears to have 6 swords, because it's 6 arms and 6 swords, and they've got 3 different people fighting it at once. And by this stage, it's very obvious template-wise that you can see below the creatures, on their feet, where their footage templates with the actual live-action footage, it's slightly different coloration on the floor kind of deal, Very much a, Scooby-Doo-esque kind of animation trick, where it's like, oh, all this is one whole map painting except for this one book, which is definitely going to be a movable item sometime within this scene. It's just one of those things, you notice it, but it's fine. But the way that they're able to make it blend, the noises, the creaking, the way it moves, unbelievably good. I think it's one of those things where by this stage, in general, sound effects usually pretty good for these creatures. But this is where I think they really hit their stride. Like, their peak is like, oh my god. Like, it's not just them making crowing sounds or whatever, like, rawr. It's just the noises from each movement that it makes. Not the movements of the swords clanging, but of its individual creaking of each ligament. And it is tremendous. It's a hell of a sequence. It's stunning to watch. The film might not be the best, but this whole sequence is absolutely remarkable. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite creatures of his. Just how he pulls it off. I'm like, oh my god, if this film was more interesting, it would be my favorite Sinbad film. Too bad skeletons beat whatever this thing is, this statue. But the statue is tremendous. It's like, man, this guy's come a long way, that this is so superfluous. It's fighting 3 different people. It's moving around. It just looks and sounds so good. I can't sell it well enough. You have to watch this stuff. But then you get Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, which is my weakest of his films. I gave it 2 stars. It suffers from a lot of bad blue screen effects. I don't even think that there's much to really write home about. There's 2 creatures in it that are semi-decent. They set up this clockwork creature that's like a minotaur, and it just sails a boat. It's very much basically they just did the exact same thing as the previous film in terms of plot, just recycled it this time. The bad guys are in a ship following them, it's all this kind of bullshit. It's not a very interesting film. I don't know what the Eye of the Tiger is. Like, I just... Sure, they go to a winter landscape, they go to different landscapes, it's not bad. You get a walrus thing, you get the monkey is the most interesting part, because it's like the Sinbad, he has this girl he wants to marry, and she's a princess, and her brother is going to be the king, or whatever, and he was turned into a monkey, and a baboon, I believe, and that baboon is from most of the film, and looks really good. It plays chess, it fucks around with people, it becomes more animalistic as it goes along, so it has a lot of personality, and I do really like that element. I don't care much for anything else. John Wayne's son, not great. Most other people, not great. See, when you have wooden, it's John Wayne's son who's wooden. I don't care much for the other monsters. Sure, they look pretty good. You get the shy monster near the end. I should say creature instead of monster. It kind of antagonizes most of them, doesn't it? But yeah, I don't know. There's the wasp scene. There's the tiny woman. There's just so much stuff that it's okay, but the effects really lay it down as worse because of like the green screen, blue screen stuff, the weird coloration stuff. The monsters are still fun, but the movie is really long. It's almost 2 hours long. It's dull as hell. I just didn't like it that much. Maybe I was too tired on the day, but just watching it, I'm just like, none of this is captivating me. And even when the monsters were on screen, I'm like, it looks good because it's Harryhausen, but I just don't really care. But look, again, they all look unique. They all look really cool. There's a fight between a lion thing. I think that actually is a tiger, because the woman who's like a magician woman, turns into a tiger. Again, she's exactly the same as Tom Baker's character from the previous one, except every time he uses powers, he gets older. She just becomes to merge with the creatures that she turns into. At one stage, she turns into a bird, comes back, becomes human again, and her foot is a bird foot. It never comes into play with the rest of the film. Like, they never mention it again. It's like, oh no, she's now part bird. And they just never talk about it again. So the consequences of the actions are kind of slim. But, yeah, it's okay. It's an okay film, but I just didn't give that much of a shit for it. It was very tiresome to watch. And then we get to last but not least. We have Clash of the Titans. Now, look, I may rectify, and before ending this video, I might actually find a copy of his first film. But if not, this is what we have, and this is what we end with. So what we end with is Clash of the Titans from 1981, which I gave 4 stars. It's a film that, again, I love the Greek mythology stuff. It's really entertaining. I've always loved Greek mythology as a kid, you know. I grew up playing, like, Age of Empires and Age of Mythology and whatever. I grew up with the remake of Clash of the Titans, like, all kinds of, like, Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief. And these are all notable because, there's a Medusa character. You've probably heard of her. Tentacles for hair, that kind of stuff. Snakes for hair, actually, not tentacles. My god, that would have ruined me. My whole career, because I call it tentacles. Oh, what is this? Not hentai, I promise. Medusa in this film, this is the first film I ever watched of Harryhausen, is breathtaking. My favourite of all these monsters. A lot of people's favourite, but this is my absolute love it. I love every element of the scene. The way it's shot, the way it's lit, the fact that the light is flickering behind her and around her, so he had to make a light flicker on the actual stop-motion model as well. The fact that she's a whole entire serpent, she's an angry creature, the hair, the serpents, it's so cool. I also love archery, so it's just, she has a bow and arrow, fucking turns people to stone, it's just beautiful stuff. I even like when she's been decapitated and he still uses her goddamn head later in the film. I love it. This is a film that is... It's really fun to watch. I only have the issue of the blue screen effects. It's not actually green screen for most of it. It's usually blue screen, but still that effect where you can really tell. Whenever he's on Pegasus, it's meant to be like, wow, look, it's never ending story-esque. He's on a big monster creature. They're flying through the wilderness. Whoa. It looks like shit. It absolutely looks like shit. And look, a lot of the reviews for this film saying like, oh, it's really cheesy, it's really poorly made or whatever. The only good thing is Harryhausen's effects, because all the characters are really like, wooden and badly acted and whatever. I actually like all the cast. I like all the characters. I like the story. I like the villains. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this movie I really enjoy. And I love all the monsters. I love how they set up that, like, nah, the Kraken's just going to come by and wipe out a whole entire civilization. Fuck it, why not? The Kraken's wet. He looks like he just came out of water. It's beautiful. I want to know how he did that. There are so many things like that, but Medusa is the highlight for me. There are so many wonderful monsters in this film. Even Pegasus, for most of its scenes, look awful, but for the most part, still looks pretty decent. Some other scenes. There's also that villain guy who is like a monster, and they like combined it with stop motion and a practical person in makeup, and I love how they cut between the two, because they're like, we want to show that he has a tail in this sequence, so let's use the stop motion version, but in this sequence we don't need the tail, so we'll just have a live action version. I love how they blend that stuff. The vulture looks fantastic. It's so perfectly blended. I didn't even realize it was a stop motion vulture. I was just like, yeah, it's just a vulture. Oh wait, it's not real. There are elements like that just blow me away. But Medusa, the whole sequence, the way it's lit, the way it's acted, the sound effects, it's just beautiful stuff. No CGI version that is overly gorgeous is going to compare. I don't care how good Uma Thurman looks as Medusa. I don't care how good the Clash of the Titans remake looks. And they even had a 5-minute long preview on the Blu-ray I have. They're like, look at the remake. Make sure you check out the remake. And they're like, they start off by kind of shitting on, the Harryhausen's effects by saying, now we have digital effects. It looks so much better. And to be fair, it actually looks pretty good. I need to rewatch that film, and I know Arrow have got a release coming out for it soon, so I'm like, I'm tempted. The film might still be a piece of shit, but I watched as a kid. I don't know what it's like now. Don't have a recontextualized notion of it. But I do like big monsters, so I can't really go wrong. I like kaiju. And I do like the Medusa in that film, but again, they go for the sexy look, not really scary look. And this one, it's dreading and terrifying, and I love that about it. I love how in the video interview of Harryhausen, he was like, I was trying to get a visual reference of Medusa, and all the stone versions of her just show this really attractive woman with snake hair, and he's like, I want her to look really ugly, like really monstrous, and I'm like, good, she's a monster, she's a creature. I love that about it. There's so much stuff. There's a two-headed dog. There are so many fun effects. There's the what's his name, Duda, whatever, the bird, the owl. The mixture of animation and a puppet. Like, I love how they blend that stuff. It's so cool. The skeletons, no, the scorpions aren't too bad as well. There are a lot of fun elements. It's not a perfect film. I gave it 4 stars, but for me, it's just Medusa. I could just, from the witches sequence, which I really like, the witches, to Medusa, I love it. Even the scorpions part, short, basically the whole second half of this film I really like, but I still like the first half. It's an alright adventure, you know, why not? I'm not huge on the fact that what's his name? I was going to say Hercules for a second there. Perseus is gifted all these things from the gods, like very much so. Zeus is like, I'm going to give him all the perks right now, so he doesn't have to do anything, but he still does. Like, he gets the shield, he gets the helmet, he gets the sword, but he doesn't have them all the time. He uses them in certain sequences, and then he loses them over the course of the film, or like gives them up in honor of like doing something else. Like the shield melts, he loses the helmet in water. You know, the only thing he really kind of keeps by the end is the owl, and he comes in halfway throughout the movie. And the sword again, he loses the sword after killing one of the bad guys. So yeah, and also the Kraken, the way the fight with the Kraken, it's simplistic, but it's easy. It's gonna take this girl because they're sacrificing the girl, so it's either gonna grab her and kill her, probably, and then swim away, or he shows up with Medusa's head and just slashes it, I guess, kind of, basically. I don't know. Let's go to my ranking. So, my ranking. So, we have from, at least according to this, 14 to 1. We have, at 14, we have Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Very much the obvious one. Then we have The Three Worlds of Gulliver. Then we have The Beasts from 20,000 Fathoms. I feel like I might put 20,000 Fathoms a bit higher in terms of star rating, like in contrast to Worlds of Gulliver, but Worlds of Gulliver does still have some interesting stuff. I'm just not huge on it. It's hard to say which one I really prefer, but I was more annoyed by The Three Worlds of Gulliver. It Came From Beneath the Sea is next, which I enjoyed. That's, for me, the next four are pretty on par. It Came From Beneath the Sea, First Man in the Moon, 1 Million Years BC, The Valley of GWANGI. For me, they all have good perks and bad perks. I like some of the stories or the characters. I love the special effects, but they all differ in what qualities and quantities I prefer. But yeah, I think I'm still pretty happy with that order, actually, because like at least Valley of GWANGI, that one with 1 Million Years BC are so neck and neck, because 1 Million Years BC doesn't really have much going for it, but I do like the cast, I do like, you know, the dinosaurs. I think Valley of GWANGI just has the extra element of, at least, it's got cowboys versus dinosaurs. I mean, come on, you know, come on. But it doesn't matter, they're all very on par, because they're all just really fun. Like, the films, in terms of quality, is one thing, but the stop motion, all the dynamation stuff, is just tremendous. Like, this isn't a quality control of, like, I'm giving it 3 stars because his animation is not great. It's like, no. His animation just enhances a maybe subpar film, you know? Then we have Mysterious Island, followed by The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, followed by Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, which I think because I just enjoy the overall picture for Earth vs. the Flying Saucers in contrast to, like, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, I love the statue creature in Golden Voyage. I really like the Flying Saucers, I like the whole narrative, I like the characters. By this point, I really enjoy the characters a lot more for the rest of these films, so that really helps me, and that helps to carry the narratives for me, because you kind of need the extra interesting things to happen while you wait for the special effects to come into play. Then you've got, at number 4, 20 Million Miles to Earth, which I gave 4 stars. Again, I really enjoy it. I think because I just love Ymir so much as a character, that really helps it for me. Because again, I think maybe I prefer Earth vs. the Flying Saucers over it as a film, but I mean, at the same time, elements of them are, like, very on par. Like, I think I like the overall picture. Actually, yeah, because I did enjoy the characters of this one too. So yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with that, actually. 20 Million Miles to Earth. That's number 4. Now my top 3 is the controversial take. At number 3, we have Jason and the Argonauts, which I know if my friend Phil watches this, he's going to be like, Julian, what the fuck? You had one job. I love this film. It's just, of the 3, mixed with, next up, Clash of the Titans at number 2, and of course, Seven Voyages of Sinbad at number 1. These ones are really on par. Again, I still ranked them higher in terms of, like, star rating. Jason the Argonauts and Seven Voyages of Sinbad, 4.5-star films for me. But, you know, Clash of the Titans, 4 stars. But I love Medusa. as much as I love the Skeleton Army, I really like the one skeleton fight from Seven Voyages of Sinbad. Like, I like how Seven Voyages of Sinbad has this great ongoing adventure, and it ends, you know? The narrative is fun, the characters are fun, the monsters are great, the effects beautiful, you know? The music is great as well. I really enjoy that for Clash of the Titans as well. Clash of the Titans, for me, is only just higher in ranking than Jason the Argonauts because, again, it's basically the same film, but it ends, and it has Medusa. And Medusa is such a standout effect. I love the Skeleton Army. There are so many great things in Jason the Argonauts. Talos is great. So many things. There's that weird monster thing with where the Golden Fleece is. It's all good, but I mean, Medusa. You just that would be number one if the film was just more interesting and didn't have the bad blue screen effects. Really, the blue screen effects really tank it for me a lot, but I can't go wrong with Medusa, and I do enjoy the whole film. It's a fun fantasy, so I think as an overall, this has been a really fun journey. I would love to still watch the other film of his that he did, the Mighty Joe Young, especially because it's his first film, and there's just so much that he's done in contrast to it. And again, there's so many other films that I feel like would have a similar effect of giant sympathetic monster, and then giant not sympathetic monsters. He's a beautiful visual storyteller. The animations, the creatures, the way they move, the way they feel. It's just tremendous work. And I mean, this is obviously why he's such a highly praised animator. Because I think the benefit too, especially after watching a lot of these featurettes, is knowing that a lot of the things weren't like fix it in post. It was, how do we make sure that in post, when we do the actual animations, that they connect with what you're watching. And I love how he was able to develop that throughout the films. Because you look at the course of his whole career and you realize that all these creatures do look amazing, obviously, and they get better and better as they go along. But they also blend really nicely with the films themselves as it goes along. And I think that's one of my favourite things about these, is that whether the films be a bit dry, a bit, you know, not very interesting, or this and that, or maybe really fun and really interesting, depending on, you know, what your flavour is. Do you like B-movie sci-fis? Do you like, you know, adventure films? Whatever your taste be, the fact remains is that these are special effects driven, you know, monster films, and I really love that about them. And it's one of the reasons I love watching Godzilla films, especially. Like, there are so many things like that I like the essence of having a cinematic experience where it's just taking something unrealistic that's so beyond imagination. And he even says this in like the special features for Clash of the Titans, where it's like, he believes that cinema should always be more than what we see. It shouldn't be capturing real life, it should be enhancing it. Hey, what if this thing that existed in these fairy tales, that existed in this mythology, was a real thing, a giant entity that existed that people had to interact with back in the old days? Hence why he loved doing tales of the past rather than tales of the future. So, yeah, I think that's just one of the really fun things about his works, and I love that you can just find them all in physical formats, and you can watch all these special features where people talk about him and praise him. And he's also done audio commentaries. Like, a lot of these have audio commentaries, which is amazing. So, yeah. Moral of the story, go watch some goddamn Ray Harryhausen films and make up your own mind as to which one you prefer the most. Or if you already have a favourite, let me know down below. Or a favourite memory, whatever it be. Let me know down below. The best thing I can say is you should check out these films. They're absolutely tremendous. So beautifully animated. Some less fun story-wise than others. Some have better characterizations. It depends, because you've got different directors, different writers. About, 1949 to 1981? About 30 to 40 years worth of, movie making. So, yeah. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Check out my Godzilla Showa era ranked video and my King Kong ranked video somewhere on the screen, because I did those. So yeah, and yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time. Adios.